Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's language item. This week we're going to take a look at prepositions. And prepositions, as you know, can be very difficult for your pupils. That's because they occur in a lot of different formations in the English language. Technically, are referred to as positions of occurrence in the sense that they they show something's position in relationship to the verb and to the noun or the subject of the sentence. But they can also appear with adjectives. We've already seen them appear with verbs being non-separated and prepositional verbs. So they can be very difficult. And when we start talking about lexical teaching, we're going to start talking about the fact that maybe some of the things that we've always treated as grammar, like phrasal verbs and prepositions, should be really taught as lexical items, that students learn these chunks of phrases as opposed to just all these individual prepositions. More on that next week, but let's just take a look at prepositions themselves. There are a variety of prepositional forms and functions in the English language. The most common, of course, is the prepositional phrase, and that's what you're most used to, like in the garden. You have the preposition in, followed by the noun phrase, the garden, garden being the head noun in that phrase, or the head word in that phrase. Those are the most common. They function as adverbials. They usually, answer the question like where or how, things like that. And that's critical. Um, but that's not the only place they occur, and that's why, of course, they become problematic. We've already seen them as prepositional verbs. You can go back to the video from 2 weeks ago about multi-word verbs, part 2. The key here is that the verb and the preposition are never ever separated. We looked at the rules that show that we're dealing with, let's say, an intransitive, inseparable phrasal verb, but in that case, the particle can be moved when you have a relative clause or a WH question word. There are 2 additional tests. I know just what you are looking for, so get ready. I'm sure we'll be lucky enough, maybe Yevka will put together another really nice scheme for us. But here we go. The first test is the answer to a WH question. If the answer is in the form of a prepositional phrase, or a PP, then you definitely have a verb with a preposition and not a prepositional phrase. Where did they decide? Where did they decide? They decided on the boat. And in that case, decided on is a prepositional, is a verb plus a prepositional, not a prepositional verb like they decided on the boat, meaning they chose to buy the boat. So you've got a couple examples in your study guide this week. If you can move the entire prepositional phrase, then you have a preposition and a verb, not a prepositional verb. Over the hill is the house. Or over the hill they walked. They walked over the hill. You can move that entire prepositional phrase. Therefore, you're dealing just with a preposition and not a prepositional verb. A number of adjectives are followed by specific prepositions. I'm sorry for confusing you. I'm afraid of the dark. I'm excited about this weekend. Those words, those adjectives, sorry, afraid, and excited, are always followed by those prepositions. This list is pretty long again. And again, this is why I think we should probably, if we introduce the word sorry, we might want to introduce the phrase sorry for. We say I'm sorry, but oftentimes we say, oh, I'm sorry for upsetting you. I'm sorry for telling you that. Afraid's the same thing. So maybe we should teach afraid of along with the adjective afraid. Idiomatic constructions with two prepositions. These, again, are things you and your students need to learn in case of, on count of, for want of. For want of a better answer, this is the one I'm giving you. These are idiomatic expressions. They don't change, and therefore they should be learned in these chunks. In case of a problem, call 911. And that's a very, very common use. So you should teach the students those common chunks instead of just, don't teach them in case of, because it doesn't make any sense. What makes sense is in case of. And notice when you say it, it's a very blended phrase. A preposition followed by a that clause. In the event that he loses my number, you should call Joe. In the event that phrase is often followed by a that clause, a relative clause beginning with that. On the basis of that information, I make a motion that we table this item on our agenda. On the grounds that he committed the crime, he is guilty. These are all, again, chunks that we should be teaching our students. And these, again, these are great discourse markers in that sense. These are great for moving along your text and moving along your speech. So we should teach students them in this chunked format as opposed to each individual word. Of course, you're going to teach the word event. It has another meaning outside this phrase, but when you encounter in the event that should be your vocabulary item or your lexical item in a text. The specific prepositional phrase, in order, is always followed by an infinitive clause. In order to impress the girl, he stood on his head. Stupid sentence, but okay, it works. In order to impress, the infinitive clause is always there. Preposition plus a preposition. There are some cases where we have two prepositions together. From behind the box, from beside the box, from inside the box, down beside the cottage, down around the cottage, down by the cottage. Again, these are things that occur in chunk formations, but the problem is sometimes you can use more than one in those instances. So again, teach the students that meaning. From behind, teach them that whole chunked meaning. From beside, they go together, so you should teach students that. And a preposition plus an adjective. Again, these are very, very common expressions: in vain, in private, of late, in full. But these break the prepositional phrase rule because they're followed not by a noun, but by an adjective. There's a few of these. These aren't as prevalent as adjectives plus prepositions, but again, we should probably teach students to look at these in chunks as opposed to individual words. Okay, and what about the meanings of prepositions? Well, there's basically three thematic roles that prepositions play in a sentence. One refers to location. And there's three ways that you can look at location. A static location, the source of the location, or the goal, where somebody wants to get to. And in static, there's two situations. There's a fixed, meaning it's never going to move, or there's an endpoint. For example, I met her in Chicago. Chicago's a fixed place. It's not going to move, so that's a static location. The house is just over the hill, meaning in terms of where I am now, I just have to go over the hill to reach my endpoint, which is the house. So static, even though the house nor the hill are going to change position, in this case, one represents the endpoint of the other. She fell off the ladder. From where did she fall? Well, off the ladder. It's the source of the location. I took the Eurostar to London. It's the goal in this case. To, very common. But notice if you say, I flew from Brussels to Berlin. From Brussels, the source, to Berlin, the goal. So you can have more than one meaning in the same sentence. So you have to be very careful. The two other meanings deal with what's referred to as instrumental. She sliced the rope with a knife. What did she use to slice the rope? A knife, or with a knife. So it's like it's like showing that this instrument had something to do with this action, and it doesn't just have to be. In most cases, is some sort of inanimate object. Committive. These are really like the time things. He said he was coming at 4 o'clock. Okay, so precisely around 4 o'clock, by 4 o'clock. They're committive. You're committing to that time location. So location, static, source, goal, instrumental, and committive. Now, what do you, oh, well, also keep in mind that some prepositions, you know this already, like on, at, in, uh, they all have more than one meaning sometimes. So you have to be careful. So you're going to have to know what meaning, what prepositional meaning is being indicated in the sentence. So with that in mind, these are what you're going to have to do sort of like on the exam. You may be given a series of sentences and asked, what is the function of the preposition? Does it function as part of a prepositional phrase? Does it function as a prepositional verb? Does it function as an idiomatic construction or an adjective plus a preposition or a construction with a preposition followed by that clause? Or an order clause followed by an infinitive clause, or a preposition or preposition adjective. So you're going to sort of need to be able to look at them. So I was reading in the garden. In this case, in the garden. Let's apply our test. If I can say, in the garden I was reading, I can, then I'm dealing with a prepositional phrase here. They finally decided on the boat, meaning they finally bought the boat or made the decision to buy the boat. Decided on is a prepositional verb. She is dependent on her parents. Dependent is an adjective. It's followed by on. It's always followed by on. So this is an adjective preposition construction. He was hurt at the hands of the bully. At the hands of is an idiomatic expression. Okay, and you're going to have to learn some of these. He did it in order to impress her. Here we have the in order plus infinitive clause. And a person came from behind the house. Double preposition. Sometimes you'll be asked to tell me what is the meaning of the preposition. Is the preposition being used to indicate location? If so, is it static? If static, is it fixed or an endpoint? If it's not static, is it source or is it goal? Or is it instrumental or is it committive? The bridge is beyond the toll booth. If you look at the comparison here, the link here, here's the bridge. I have to go further. It's beyond the toll booth. This is a endpoint, a static endpoint. I got a call from my son. From my son. Who did I get the call from? My son. I'm looking here at a source. Okay. The troops marched toward the town. Goal. They ate with chopsticks. Instrumental. I'm with you on this. Committed. I'm committing to you. I'm with you on this. Okay, so we'll practice some of these in class this week. You don't have a post test for this because I think this is something that you need to practice and test in class first, and then you're going to have a post test. In addition, we're going to be looking at a website, a corpus website, that'll help you to take a look at prepositions a little bit more closely and try to figure things out on your own. So in our instructions for this week, I tell you to make sure that you open an account at the BYU corpus site. So please make sure you do that because we're going to be using that in class on Friday. Okay, then I will see you in class on Friday. I hope you have a good rest of the week. And don't worry too much about these prepositions. Just know the functions, know the meanings, or at least have an idea what they are, and then we'll talk more about them in class on Friday. All right, thank you guys.